Hi everyone, so welcome to this fifth session of our visual arts focus entitled French Encounters Art Basel Hong Kong that we organized together with the Consulate France in Hong Kong and the Institut français. My name is Adeline Blanchard. I'm responsible for visual arts at Institut français, and we've been organizing these events together with Chloé-Mélody Desrues, who's audiovisual attaché at the French Consulate.
Hello, everyone.
Hi, Chloé-Mélody. And so we are today, so we are presenting two young women artists, one from Hong Kong. Actually, it's a Hong Kong-based artist, but a Filipina artist, Xyza Cruz Bacani. Hi, Xyza.
Hello.
So she will be in conversation with John Tain, who is the head of AAA, so Asia Art Archive in Hong Kong. Hi, John.
Hello. Hi.
Hello. So that would be the first part of this session, and then in the second part we will have a talk with French artist Gaëlle Schwann, winner of the 2021 Aware Prize. She will be in conversation with Thomas Conchou, who is an independent curator and mediator of the new commissioners of La Fondation de France. And we will have also an introduction by Anaïs Roche from AWARE, so Archives of Women Artists, Research and Exhibitions. Hello, Anaïs, here you are.
Hi, Adeline.
Hi. So as far as Gaëlle and Thomas, they will
They're coming. They will be here in less than 5 minutes.
Okay, that's fine. So we will start and then in the last part of this intense session, so we will have a walk through the M+ Museum that will be presented by Chloé-Mélody Desrues. And so I will now start with a presentation of Filipina artist Xyza Cruz Bacani. So you were born in 1987, so you're an author and a photographer, and you use work to raise awareness about underreported stories. And having worked as a second generation of a domestic worker in Hong Kong for almost a decade, you are particularly interested in the intersection of labor, migration, and human rights. You are one of the Magnum Foundation Photography and Social Justice Fellows in 2015. So you got many awards, among them the award of the Outstanding Women in the Nation's Service in Humanities, 2019. Also Asia 21 Young Leaders. Also, so you're one of the BBC's 100 Women of the World, so you got that in 2015. And you are also an author of the book We Are Like Air that you're going to talk about today. And you are represented by Redux Pictures in New York, and also by Christine Park Gallery in London and New York. So yeah, that's it for Xyza for this first introduction. And John Tain. So you are a head of research at Asia Art Archive. So where you lead a team based in Hong Kong, but also in New Delhi and Shanghai. And your recent projects include the exhibition Crafting Communities, which looks at the confluence of feminism, of crafts, social practices in the biennial series of Womanifesto that has been organized in Thailand and also Africa, South East Asia. and also a collaboration with the Dhaka Art Summit. So you are an advisor for the upcoming Asia Forum, and you were previously curator for modern and contemporary collections at the Getty Research Institute in Los Angeles. John, so I will give you the floor to start the conversation with Xyza. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you so much, Adeline and Salomé at the Institut français, and also to Chloé-Mélody at the Consulate here in Hong Kong, and also to Anaïs and also to Camille at Aware for the kind invitation to join them and to work with them on presenting the work of two younger women artists. And when the invitation came, I thought immediately actually of Xyza because she not only is one of my favorite artists of Hong Kong, but I also thought Xyza is someone whose work speaks very strongly about what Hong Kong actually is, or the different ways of understanding Hong Kong. But before we get into that, Xyza, I was wondering maybe we could start by thinking about some of the just kind of for people who are maybe less familiar with your work. We could take a little time to look at some of the exhibitions that you've worked on.
Yeah, that would be great. Hi, everyone.
Hi. Yeah.
So,
sharing the screen. Okay. Okay. Oh.
Her mic is off.
Xyza, I think your mic is off for some reason.
Okay.
Okay, there we go. Yeah.
So John and I chose to present We Are Like Air. I've met John in person in this exhibition, so it's very memorable that we're talking about this now. So John and I have known John for so long, and I mean in a way that he's a Hong Kong famous person, so in the art world. So I have known about him, so it was wonderful to have met him in this exhibition. So We Are Like Air is an exhibition that has that I have done in Hong Kong in different spaces and also in other countries, cities around the world. And We Are Like Air is a 5-year project. It's actually the core of my work as a photographer because of my very sexy background, because I'm a former migrant worker myself. And so I thought I was in a very unique position to actually tell the stories of migration because I experience it, I live it myself. So We Are Like Air because for me, migrant workers are like air. It's they're important, they're a necessity, but often unseen in the society. So We Are Like Air was first launched in Hong Kong Arts Center.
And that's where these photos are from, right?
Yes, these photos, yeah. Next, please.
Okay. Okay, there we go.
So when we were trying to put together the exhibition, it's actually very difficult for me to pick the images because it's like 280 pages of a book. So I need to really pick images. And one of the things that I really love doing with my work is this grid style of putting together all these images to create a narrative. So when people try to look at it, or the audience try to look at it, they will feel like they're reading a book or they're reading a text. So for the images to connect more with the audience. So that's why I presented it this way. Next, please.
Hello.
And with these sets of images, I decided to make it a collaborative project between me and my mother because her story is the one tying up together all the stories in We Are Like Air. So I asked her if she could write her feelings or what she feels when she looks at the images. So all these handwritten notes are from my mother. So it's a collaborative practice between a mother and a daughter who were both migrant workers themselves.
And it was really interesting, I think, the exhibition. I mean, one thing that really struck me, Xyza, at the exhibition was, I think your output is primarily photography,
Yes.
but, this felt very much like an installation, like there was photographs, but, as you mentioned, there was inscriptions of your mother on the photographs. There was also objects like, art, like archival materials, like, passports, letters, and notes that, were also part of it. So it felt like almost like a, very curated display, I guess, of not just your photographs, but also of your lives.
Yes.
Yeah.
The reason for that was when we were putting together the exhibition, I always believe that photography can be presented in different ways. It's not just a print on a wall. Like there are so many ways that we can actually connect with the people viewing the photograph. That's why I included objects. I even included a poetry with it. And I think I was very lucky with this exhibition because I was allowed to play. I was allowed to do whatever that I deem that needs to be done when we were putting together an exhibition. Next slide, please. This is an example of objects presented. So these are plants. We've collected plants from different people, succulents and orchids from other people. And what I did was put together images from We Are Like Air and buried it with the soil. And then we have the orchids and succulents growing because it kind of like my interpretation for resilience. It's something beautiful, but it's also something that can be thorny. It like cactuses. That's why I presented it in a way that like this. And it's also another way for me to like it's like a giveaway for the people that I photographed. So after the exhibition, all the people that was involved in the exhibition actually took one of these plants, and luckily a lot of them are still alive until now, and they've been taking care of it. Yeah, so for me, I like that part where people that just don't leave the exhibition. They have something to bring home with them that is not too expensive, but they can look after, or that they can take care of, just the way migrant workers have taken care of the society. Yeah. So next slide, please.
Okay.
So I also presented this in New York. So this is an installation, text installation, where I collected the quotes from different people and I projected it on the wall in our gallery. And I also created this cross stitch. It's actually very French. It's a French cross stitching is the French way of I forgot how the term for it, but it's when you create something using those what do you call the thing? I haven't done it in a long time. Threads. So it's basically like putting it together in this cross stitch, and I chose an image, and it's an interactive installation between people, between an image and the people who come for a visit. So can you show the next slide, please?
Yes.
Thank you. So as you can see, there's a person who went into the exhibition, and so because she interacted with the installation by helping with the cross stitch until she got tired, but it made her feel that she's part of the exhibition. She's not just there to look at it, but it's also she's there to leave something on the exhibition.
Yeah. And I mean, I should also point out that one of the things that was really impressive about We Are Like Air is that, this is a project. You mentioned it was a 5-year project that is deeply personal in the sense that it's telling your story, right? I mean, but not just your story, but also that of your family, your mother, especially because as you say, as part of the narrative, it's part of the history, the family history, whereby when you were 8 years old, your mother, became a domestic worker. And first she was, in the UAE, and then she came to Hong Kong and basically has been in Hong Kong ever since. And you joined her about 11 years after, right?
Yes.
And I think for about a decade also worked as a domestic worker in the same household. And so this project is kind of documenting that history, your lives with your employer, Mrs. Louis. And I mean, it was so kind of unusual because Mrs. Louis, your employer, was also there at the exhibition. It was almost like she was part of the family as well in some way. As well as being your employers. But so it was about all of you, but it was also kind of about this larger narrative, right? Because what people may not know, when they think of Hong Kong, people think, okay, Hong Kong has this colonial history as a kind of a British colony. It has a history, of course, to China and connection to China. But Hong Kong is also a place where about 10% of the workforce are domestic workers, and about half of those domestic workers are Filipina. Largely Filipina, right? Women Filipina. And so, this story is also kind of in some ways symbolic or kind of, representative of that larger narrative. And I think it's interesting the way that your project not only is about you and your personal biographical story, but also about that larger history, right? A collective history about, the Philippines and kind of the way that the Philippine population is actually a very, like air, travels, right, and moves and kind of, flows to different places. So, the way that it's like, not just like involving people, but also about other people, beyond who we immediately see was kind of really interesting about the project.
Thank you. I think I agree with everything that you said, and that's really nice. Thank you. Those are really nice words. Very kind. What I love about this project also, it kind of bring together to Hong Kongers and Filipinos together, or the domestic workers that they hire. It brings them together in a way. It kind of become a bridge for them to understand each other better, because this project, some employers goes there at the exhibition and then they're like, oh my God, my domestic helper actually have a life. So it's them trying understanding the domestic helpers, domestic workers, and then the domestic workers understanding the employers as well. So it became this bridge where they connected more than beyond an employment contract. So they started speaking more. And what I love is the kids that have grown up under a nanny. And they were like, I've never thought to ask if my nanny have children, or they never thought that their nannies have other lives except being their nannies. They think they were always there. So it's like, oh, they're like air, they're always there. And now they're realizing the importance of them. So that's the thing that I love about this project, is the connection it had made. It connected people together. It brought people together, just like how Mrs. Louis came to the exhibition. She rarely goes out. It was such a big deal when she
well,
came.
it's very special, right? Yeah, for her too.
So it was very special for me that night. And so next slide, please.
Okay.
So I included this photo because I really find it funny. Not really funny, but this is an installation of my we are like, we also touch about religion, right? So one thing that migrant workers have or still retain is their faith or the religion. They brought it over from the Philippines, from Indonesia. And so it's one thing that they have. It's something that they will always have. And so with this installation, I installed a Wong Tai Sin. Wong Tai Sin is is a deity in Hong Kong. It's where people pray for fortune, I think, where when they pray, and my mother does it every day. So it's part of her job. She's born a Catholic. She is still a Catholic, but she assimilated by praying into this type of religion by praying for her employer. So she prays for her employer for luck every day. So she asks the Wong Tai Sin every day, what's going to happen in, with the stock market, what's going to happen with the weather, with Hong Kong. So I put together this installation of Wong Tai Sin in New York it's also a part of me of showing a different side of Hong Kong, that it's not just about tea. It's not about just about, you know, you mentioned about Hong Kong history of colonization and all. So I was thinking, oh, I should bring this back to New York, this Wong Tai scene, so people can see that, you know, Hong Kong people have different beliefs, you know. So when I saw this, it was not supposed to be a praying area. But people started going there and praying up to a point where I was telling my galleries that you should put a coin box there, where one prayer, $1, so we can earn something out of this. Because a lot of people were praying, and I asked them, "What are you praying for? And who are you praying for? And do you even understand this installation?" And they were like, "Oh, it's Buddhism, it's Confucianism." So it's a little bit like a critique of how how people outside Asia see Asian culture. They think it's something exotic. It's something that should be done because it's exotic for Asians. So they should treat it in a very exotic way as well. So it was a critique, a very mild critique of how people view Asian art or Asian beliefs or Asian faith. So it was a little bit funny at that moment, and I really wish we could have put that dollar box. We could have earned a lot from the number of people who were praying on that installation.
You'd be a rich lady now.
I could have done it, but no, we didn't. It's a missed opportunity.
Yeah.
So next slide, please.
Okay. Yeah.
So this is the book of We Are Like Air. So it's 280 pages. It's 8 different stories with my mother's story tying them all up together. It's 8 chapters. It's 8 and it's about Hong Kong. It's about the Philippines. It's about the migrant domestic workers and their children who they left behind, and the challenges of being a migrant, who is basically the axis who hold the two sides of migration. But then it's also a celebration of migrant workers, because there's merit to putting out stories about struggles and difficulties of life, but also we must celebrate them as champions, because they are champions. They're not just taking care of one family, they're taking care of 2. So for me, this book is a celebration of migrant domestic workers, mothers, children, and Hong Kong in general.
Yeah, and I mean, what's really interesting about the book is, like, it has similar content to what we saw in the exhibition, but it's presented very differently. There obviously, it's like designed so like a photo book, so there's full page spreads, full bleed and everything like that, and it's really beautiful. And maybe one thing that I should just ask you to talk a little about is that you're primarily so you're a photographer who began working about 10-12 years ago, right? Something like that. Yeah. And but so in the kind of in an age when many people are working digitally, and but you started working in film, if I remember correctly. Yeah. And you like to work in black and white. Can you talk a little about why that is?
Well, it's a personal choice, to be honest. It's a personal choice for me to present my photos in black and white, because I love focusing on emotions, and sometimes color can be too much. For me, color is too much. It's very rare that I do colors, because unless color is important in the message that I'm trying to get across, I usually choose black and white, because I love showcasing the moment, focusing on the moment instead of the loudness of color. Like in Hong Kong especially, there's so much color, like neon lights. You'll have the blue color everywhere. Right. So and also another reason for that is I found my creative side of me in Hong Kong. I discovered the creative side of me in Hong Kong, and Hong Kong have like different shades of gray. The weather in Hong Kong is very gray. I don't know. That's how I see it. So when you take the photograph, when I take a photograph, if it's in color, it looks flat. But when it's in black and white, you can see the different shades of gray, maybe because of the light of Hong Kong, the color, the weather in Hong Kong. So that's why I started putting out black and white more than colors, because of me discovering my love for creating in Hong Kong.
Yeah. And I mean, it's sometimes it has like really kind of surprising results. Like, you know, for instance, in the book, your photographs are all basically black and white. But then there's like a few like, you know, historical photographs that are in color, but they have like, you know, that kind of 1970s, 1980s like historical feel. So it's like, you know, the opposite of what we, you know, like when we watch movies, the old movies are black and white and the new movies are color, but in your book, it's the more recent things that are black and white, and it's the older things that are color, you know? So it's kind of like the value of color and black and white are totally reversed. So that's really interesting. But I think, you know, this also brings up the kind of the point or interesting thing, which is that, you know, so you're someone who works with photography, but you kind of have very different modes of expression. Like sometimes you do you know, like exhibitions, sometimes you do books, and sometimes you do kind of even like, you know, slideshow or like audio visual presentations. Like how do you think about, you know, for each series, like what do you like how it's going to be represented?
I think of it in a way that when I present a project or a certain sets of images in it, I think of ways how it can interact with people more, because I believe that photography is not just about me as an artist. It's not just about the object or the photograph that I created. I always think about the people who's gonna view the photographs. So it's about me, the people that I photograph, and the people who are gonna view the photographs. So I want them to feel a certain emotion when they're looking at my work. It's not just about passing through, because you know we live in a digital world, as you mentioned, and our attention span is so short. You know, like we just scroll like that, like we scroll. So for me, when we view something that is hang on the wall, we just go past through it. We don't even like stay there and watch it or look at it in a way that we absorb it. So that's why I try to find different ways to present a certain project. And yeah, I even do journalism now. So for me it's important that my projects can be seen, because these stories are not fiction. These are non-fiction stories. And non-fiction stories, we need for me, it needs to be seen by people, because this is not just my story. It's the stories of different people, and as a conduit of these stories, I feel like a certain responsibility for their stories to be seen. So I find different ways to present them to the public.
And so maybe, you know, you're talking about the stories of the people. I mean, not just your story, but also stories of the people that you're working with and that you're documenting. Can you talk us a little about the kind of more recent projects that you've undertaken? I mean, both, I think, before you went to the Philippines in the last year or so, but also the last projects that you were doing here in Hong Kong as well.
So I went to the Philippines before the lockdown, and then I got locked down. So because of the pandemic, then I wasn't able to return to Hong Kong. So I decided to do stories in my hometown, a very small town, 8 hours from Manila. So it's a very rural area. So you know, I'm a storyteller. I think I'm proud of that, and I always find ways to find stories. And luckily, in our small town, I call it strange fruit in a way, that it's me rediscovering the town that I grew up with, you know. So I've been discovering my neighbors, the people. So I started doing stories about healthcare issues because, you know, we're under a pandemic. So I was like, oh, maybe I should do stories about healthcare. And then I started doing stories about farmers or the agriculture section, home birth. I've done different stories about a rural town, and it was published in different international publication, which I'm very grateful for. And in Hong Kong, before I left Hong Kong, I was actually photographing the protest. I was photographing, I'm putting together this project in the about the Philippines, about education as a weapon. I call it this new project. I haven't found the space for it, but it's called Education as a Weapon. So it's about how children in the southern part of the Philippines are being used in war or in war-torn areas, but instead of photographing the usual war images, I was actually photographing the whys behind the wars, or why is it happening. So it's more like the whys behind it. And so in Hong Kong, I'm currently part of this exhibition with Parasite. It's called Curtains. So
we'll talk about this exhibition later on together with the curator, Larisse Frogier, because we have at 12 a.m. Paris time, which is, I think, 4 p.m.
6 p.m. 6 p.m.
I'm sorry, Hong Kong time. So he will mention the exhibition with you, Xyza. So I think, so thank you very much for this conversation that is really interesting as far as we understood. So you are now in lockdown in the Philippines. And before jumping into the second session, the second part of this talk with Gaël Schwan, I wanted to know how it is for you to go through the pandemic right now, and do you have an idea when you will be able to go back to Hong Kong?
Well, I'm very happy that we're all getting, people are getting vaccinated, and I do think that I'm going to be returning to Hong Kong by June. I'm just waiting for the flight ban to be lifted, and so I'm looking forward to actually seeing the exhibition in person, because this is my first in-person exhibition that I have done since we are like air, actually. I rested from doing any exhibition, and so when Parasite asked me to be part of the Curtains exhibition, I said yes, because it's being done in person. I'm not really a huge fan of online exhibitions because I already have Instagram. So I like doing in-person exhibitions, as John knows, and I do think that when books or exhibitions like this are really important with this digital age that we're in. And I think what John and the HR Archive has been doing, I think I just visited your office twice before with Chantal, and she showed me this massive collection of books, catalogs, and I was overwhelmed. I was like, I didn't even know that we have this. And I think I was like, is this insured? How do we protect this? We need to really protect it. Because, the future generation of artists, I do think we're very lucky that we have the collection of HR Archive. So we have something to look back for, not just online, but something that is, that's something that we can touch, something that we can smell. I really love that about your collection.
Yeah. Well, I love working with artists like you, and also I think, showing the diversity of what Hong Kong is, and also the diversity of what Asia is. So, but anyway, Adeline?
Thank you so much to both of you. Thank you to Xyza, thank you to John for this very interesting conversation. So we will carry on with the second part of this session. So with French artist Gaël Schwan.